Chapter 725. All of a sudden. The voices on the commercial bus quieted down. Everyone turned towards Almighty Xiao. The production crew suddenly remembered that a long time ago, everyone had been hyping up Xiao Mo's relationship with Xiao Mo. After all, Qin Mo was the only one who could catch Almighty Xiao's attention. Xiao Sanpang coughed heavily. "Captain, you mean, the question on Weibo?" Almighty Xiao had said a few more words. Xiao Sanpang heaved a sigh of relief. He had been afraid his captain would snatch Qin Mo from Little Spade. "He seems to be asking for you to sleep with me." "I'm fine with it, but what do you think?" Everyone was shocked to hear Almighty Xiao say so many words at once. From his tone, the two of them couldn't have been together in the past. Qin Mo remained silent, reaching out to tug the youngster's collar. It was obvious he wanted to sleep with her. Xiao Sanpang was worried his captain would be upset, hence, he consoled, "It's fine, Captain, I can accompany you tonight." "It's fine." 2 words, a completely different attitude. Let's drink tonight." Almighty Xiao glanced over, his words clearly directed at Qin Mo, "All right." The two of them went back and forth. They acted as though there was no one else around. Lin Chintao turned decisively, lowering his voice. "Little Spade, your love rival has appeared. Almighty Xiao isn't easy to deal with. Do you have any countermeasures? Does throwing you out count?" Bo Jiu arched a brow. Ever since the Almighty had asked them to sleep together, Bo Jiu had felt the need to communicate with the filming crew. "Sleep separately." The storyboard director's voice was a little loud. Even Qin Mo, who had his eyes shut, glanced over. Bo Jiu shot the storyboard director a look. "Cough." The storyboard director lowered her voice further. "No, it will be more interesting with 2 people in a room. Don't worry, we are professionals, it won't be a problem." Bo Jiu wanted to say that wasn't what she was worried about, but before she could continue, they had reached the hotel. It was probably because of the Weibo post. The fans living in Lin City had now gathered together and appeared at the entrance of the hotel. Everyone looked very excited. Xiao Sanpang took out a small mirror and a large black mirror from his pocket. He looked at himself and turned to ask Bo Jiu, "Am I super handsome now?" "Special. But you're a big man, why the hell would you carry a small mirror with you?" In fact, he was really handsome. Especially after completing the mission, everyone put on the team's uniform with a white shirt inside and a black bag on one shoulder. When they got off the bus, they immediately became a sight to behold. Moreover, this kind of scenery was not something that could be seen all the time. When the 3 teams stood together, it was more than just eye-catching. The screams of the fans could be heard from afar. "I really can't help it. It's all because I'm too handsome," Xiao Sanpang said as he walked. Lin Chintao unceremoniously kicked him. As fans, they loved watching their idols interact like this. It always felt very loving. Moreover, only after meeting the real person did he realize something. Spade Z and Almighty Qin were really handsome. Moreover, the actions of those 2 people could really stir up people's hearts. Let's take the simplest example. The youngster was originally walking in front with one hand in his pocket. Almighty Qin reached out to pull the strap of the youngster's bag. The youngster stopped, glancing over to hear what Almighty Qin was saying. Almighty Qin looked at the youngster, his lips curving into a smile. His smile was so warm that the fans couldn't help but want to take pictures. The production crew hadn't expected so many fans to camp at the hotel. Fortunately, they were quick to react and immediately called the hotel's security, asking them to help control the scene. There were indeed many things to take note of when dealing with fans. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain once it made the headlines. Hence, even the security guards didn't dare to push them, using their bodies to block. The main director shouted until his voice was hoarse. With much difficulty, he managed to send the guests into the hotel. Fortunately, nothing untoward happened. But there was one thing. If the situation continued, tomorrow's filming would probably be shortened. There were benefits to being popular, but at the same time, there were unavoidable obstacles. F***ck, the shape of my hair. Zhao Sanpang pointed at his head. It had indeed been squeezed a moment ago, and now, it was standing straight, looking rather amusing. Lin Chintao couldn't bring himself to laugh. This is my last outdoor variety show. Bo Jiu arched a brow. Lin Chintao gritted his teeth. Why aren't you asking me the reason? Bo Jiu remained silent, unwrapping a lollipop. Lin Chintao couldn't help himself. In the past, I didn't think fans should be like this. What do you think? Zhao Sanpang was the one who asked that. Lin Chintao couldn't describe the feeling he had, it was just that some people had told them to stop, but they still chased after them. When they moved, they would even bump into the production crew's assistant. It was a painful feeling. Zhao Sanpang felt the need to console the youngster in the alliance group. Little Lin, pitiful, let me tell you, this isn't much. Look at how Little Spade was splashed with cola by the fans, didn't he say anything? The moment he finished his sentence. In an instant, the surrounding temperature dropped by a few degrees. Bo Jiu hadn't expected her almighty fatty to bring this up. She froze in the middle of her lollipop, turning towards Qin Mo, who was standing beside her. When? His cold and deep voice seemed to be able to send chills down one's spine. When Qin Mo's eyes weren't smiling, he gave off a devilish coldness. Zhao Sanpang swallowed hard. What, when? The fan splashed cola on me. Qin Mo's aura changed visibly. Zhao Sanpang understood what he meant. Don't you know? It was at the start of the competition. Since Little Spade became the vice-captain of Supreme Alliance, so, that wasn't a fan. Bo Jiu interrupted Zhao Sanpang, her eyes fixed on Qin Mo. She knew the bottom line of a puppy. Qin Mo watched the youngster with a deep gaze. It was an oppressive aura. Zhao Sanpang and Lin Chintao wanted to hug each other to resist the coldness. Who's the mastermind? Qin Mo's voice rang out again. There was no warmth in his voice. Bo Jiu didn't reply since she had already dealt with him. If she said anything, her relationship with Old Bai would be exposed. It wouldn't be good if the Almighty found out she had hired someone to keep an eye on things and guessed what was going on. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster before tugging her collar, speaking slowly, you don't want to say. Then let me ask you, was there an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Of course. Bo Jiu smiled. Then. Everyone heard Qin Mo say, okay. His fingers released the youngster's collar. Lin Chintao tilted his head. Is the main point of this matter about revenge? Yes, Qin Mo. You don't know how vengeful he is. Those who like him are completely bewitched by his face. Think about it, when he was playing with us, didn't he always dig holes for us? Zhao Sanpang wouldn't let go of any chance to defame Qin Mo. It was important to maintain the image of a nemesis. Lin Chintao held his hand. I think you're right. You have good taste. How are you feeling now? A second ago, they had been kicking each other, but now, they seemed to have found each other's soulmates. They were extremely concerned for each other. Lin Chintao replied honestly, compared to Little Spade, my fans seem especially adorable. Bo Jiu glanced at them before glancing at Brother Mo's erect back. She gave each of them a kick, preparing to start the fight. Zhao Sanpang hadn't expected himself to lose to Qin Mo, but to lose to Little Spade as well. This was an insult to his handsomeness. Don't come over. If you come any closer, I'll tell others that you molested me. Zhao Sanpang hid behind the sofa, pointing at her. Lin Chintao was hiding as well. When he heard her words, he exploded. Fatty, can you be more shameless? No one will believe such an excuse. No, Captain, don't go, save me, it's too disadvantageous for the two of us to fight. With your help, Little Spade will definitely lose. Rao Rong chuckled, lifting his legs to leave. His words were even more shameless to him. But when he turned the corner, he turned back to glance at the silver-haired youngster. It seemed like Qin Mo really cared about Spade Z. It wasn't his style to care for someone so much. After all, that man. He had never had any feelings. Time trickled by. Chapter 726. On the other hand, the storyboard director was troubled by the content. Should they shoot it or not? If they did, they would have to include the previous scenes as well. But the previous topics were too sensitive and weren't suitable to be broadcasted. But through this incident, the filming crew understood. Some people in the production team also understood that there was a reason behind the coke splashing incident. In the past, they had always felt that the entertainment industry was full of twists and turns. But now, they realized that as long as you were the center of attention, you would be pitted against. Almighty Qin's attitude was obvious as well. He was protective. The storyboard director took a moment before deciding to keep the part where Almighty Qin pinched Little Spade's face since it was too loving. The rest could be edited out. The youngster noticed them, arching a brow. Why aren't you following Brother Mo? I'll stay and film you. The storyboard director felt as though she was turning into a Spade fan, wanting to give the youngster more screen time. Bo Jiu rejected them decisively. Hurry and film Brother Mo, with you guys around, Almighty Shao won't dare to do anything to him. The storyboard director, there will be someone filming, the cameraman interrupted. Bo Jiu smiled. That's good. The storyboard director couldn't help asking, what do you think Almighty Shao will do to Almighty Qin? His gaze is so obvious, what do you think? Bo Jiu asked. The storyboard director coughed. Bo Jiu took a moment before breaking into a smile. But he won't have a chance. Why? Bo Jiu arched a brow. He isn't Brother Mo's type. Was she going to expose Almighty Qin's ideal girlfriend? The storyboard director's eyes lit up. What type does Almighty Qin like? Someone as handsome and aggressive as me. Bo Jiu leaned back, her long legs crossed as she opened the Hero app on her phone, a mischievous smile on her face. The storyboard director, should we broadcast this part? The cameraman asked his colleague. The storyboard director held her forehead. We can't broadcast it, it'll attract haters. It's fine, I have a lot of haters. Bo Jiu arched a brow at the two of them. Do you want to play hero? I'll carry you guys. The reason why the production team was so excited when they heard that they were going to invite an esports god was because the entire production team had been addicted to playing games recently. The youngster's question. The cameraman was obviously shaken. The storyboard director replied solemnly, I'm still working. It's mainly because you're so dark-skinned, what's there to be proud of? Playing games with the guests is also considered work. The cameraman sat down and asked, which area are you from? Hey! The storyboard director insisted. The cameraman said, did you forget what team has said about us? 10,000-year pit. The storyboard director's attitude changed instantly. There is another situation that I am still researching. When I think it is possible, I will call you. But I also have something to ask you. Qin Mo raised his eyebrows. What? Is your hand really fine, or did you come back early for some reason? When Big Brother Xiao asked this question, Lin Fan's expression changed. The smoke became much thinner. Qin Mo flicked his cigarette. Find out more about the enemy. No need. Xiao placed his glass down and stood up. But we both know that if your hand isn't healed, Supreme Alliance will never be able to defeat Xiangnan. Qin Mo took a puff of his cigarette but didn't say anything. The conversation between the two of them ended there. In the room, Bojiu felt that she had killed enough and it was time to remind the Almighty. She opened WeChat. Brother Mo, you can't drink until you're full. Do you want a barbecue? After listening to the voice message, Qin Mo reached out to extinguish his cigarette. Hungry. Being hungry wasn't a big deal. She was more worried about what someone would do to him. There was something in Qin Mo's voice. Come down. All right. Bojiu paused. Where's Almighty Xiao? Qin Mo arched a brow. Why are you concerned about him? Aren't you drinking together? Qin Mo replied, I've finished. Bojiu was satisfied with his answer. She knew her puppy wouldn't be Almighty Xiao's type. She kept her phone and stuffed her hands into her pockets as she headed downstairs. Qin Mo's gaze didn't leave the screen. If it really was a second personality. What if it suddenly disappeared? What would happen? Qin Mo thought about the possibility. Qin Mo tightened his grip on his glass, even his breathing seemed to stop for half a beat. He wouldn't allow that to happen. The lights dimmed and the piano music in the dining room changed. The moment Bojiu came down, she saw that the cameraman hadn't followed them in. He was standing there. Did that mean that the Almighty and Almighty Xiao had been alone? She arched a brow and walked forward. There was a knife and fork on the table, along with a bottle of red wine that had been soaked. Bojiu walked over and picked up the bottle, preparing to pour herself a glass. Qin Mo held on to the youngster's wrist. It seems like someone hasn't reflected deeply enough. I was wrong. The 3 words were insincere. That attitude. Qin Mo glanced at her and pushed the steak over. Finish this and head upstairs to sleep. Bojiu was really hungry. She ate the meat and didn't forget to ask about the enemy. What did you and Almighty Xiao talk about? Qin Mo glanced at the youngster's side profile, his voice slow. It's about a second personality. After some people suffer psychological trauma, they would become completely different from before. Even some of their preferences would change. The intelligent Bojiu wouldn't assume that the Almighty was telling her a story. But she wouldn't fall into his trap. If she did, it would be equivalent to admitting that there was something wrong with her. She continued to eat the beef, her lips lifting. It sounds interesting. I thought you would talk about gaming, but it's about psychology. The world of a bookworm is always so profound. The formation of a second personality will affect a person to a certain extent. Qin Mo removed the wine glass but didn't end the topic. Instead, he glanced at Bojiu with a deep gaze. For example, what you were good at in the past would become good at in the future. What you weren't good at in the past would be stimulated by certain things. It wouldn't be interesting because the second personality isn't the main personality. Is it interesting to have information? Bojiu couldn't understand why the Almighty's aura had turned cold. But her instincts told her. The so-called second personality was definitely related to her. The Almighty had already started investigating her. Perhaps it was because she had been caught red-handed in the convenience store. Regardless of the situation, it was only a matter of time before the Almighty discovered her secret. Bojiu took another bite of the steak. It's interesting to exist. Is that so? Qin Mo's voice turned colder. Bojiu chuckled. Yes. The meal wasn't much. Mainly, Bojiu wasn't sure how much the Almighty had found about her. He probably already knew that there was a huge difference between the current her and the past her. Hence, the next step was to investigate. Bojo narrowed her eyes. Fortunately, the cameraman didn't enter. Just as Bojo was about to ask the storyboard director to arrange another room for her, Chin Mo pulled her into the bedroom. Just as Bojo was about to ask the storyboard director to arrange another room for her, Chin Mo pulled her forcefully into the bedroom. A door separated the filming crew. There was a camera in the room. At this moment, the guests were free to do whatever they wanted. Bojo hadn't expected that the Almighty wouldn't even do anything. He only said 2 words to the camera, "Sleep." He immediately pulled a towel over and covered the camera. Chapter 727. In front of the screen, the main director almost choked on the tea in his mouth when he saw this scene. He picked up the walkie-talkie and said, "What time is it?" "He's already asleep. Get him to take the towel away and take more bedtime shots. Why don't you tell Almighty Chin yourself?" They didn't dare to order him around. The director coughed heavily, shifting the topic. You guys must be tired after a day of filming, go to bed early." The assistant and cameraman glanced up silently, understanding. As expected, they weren't the only ones afraid of Almighty Chin, the director was the same. The only one who wasn't afraid of Almighty Chin was Big Spade, who slept with him. Actually, when Bojo saw his actions, she was momentarily at a loss. But she quickly whistled. Then, he turned around and unplugged the voice cable. It was a piece of cake for a hacker. Bojo had been smiling leisurely. But when she saw Chin Mo walking towards her, she raised her eyebrows. The Almighty's aura was too obvious. Bojo wanted to turn to the side. But this time, Chin Mo didn't want to exchange blows with a certain someone. He pressed his entire body against the wall and pressed the youngster against it. The coldness in his eyes couldn't be more obvious. That gaze, Bojo had only seen it when she had fought against Chin Mo in her previous life. There wasn't any warmth. It was as though he was catching a criminal. It seemed that he had really been angered by her this time. Or perhaps he knew something. Bojo arched a brow. After finding out that the Almighty was her pet, she couldn't imagine how she could become his enemy. But Bojo understood. The two of them were bound to become rivals. The Key Case Investigation Unit had never stopped investigating her. Because she was reborn, she had a lot of natural advantages. Even the environment around her was helping her to cover up. Even if it was the Almighty, he wouldn't look at her with suspicion. But this was just temporary. One day, the Almighty would find out who she was. Let's not talk about the girl first. She couldn't stop touching the computer. She had something she had to do. The two of them were on opposite sides from the very beginning. You don't think it's important for a person to disappear? Bojo felt the pressure on her wrist increase. He knew that the other party's emotions weren't right. Bojo heaved a long sigh. "Brother Mo, that's not what I meant. I just feel that if the second personality is formed, it wouldn't disappear for no reason. If the second personality is stronger than the first, it would be able to take over the peak. But regardless of which personality it is, once it appears, it would be remembered. Besides, since the second personality has appeared, it wouldn't be willing to disappear." Chin Mo's deep gaze seemed to be scrutinizing her. "In that case, if it were you, you wouldn't bear to disappear either." "Of course." Bojo knew it was an abstract question, but to be fair, she didn't want to disappear. At the very least, she wanted to win the National League. She enjoyed her current state. Chin Mo lowered his lids and looked at the youngster in front of him. His aura seemed to be returning to normal. When Bojo saw the coldness in his eyes disappear, she heaved a sigh of relief. However, he threw her onto the large bed at the side. While the teenager's eyes were wide open, Chin-mo had already returned to his cold and aloof self. He reached out to tug his collar open and bent down, causing Bojo to pause. Her wrists were pressed down and the possibility of her escaping was slim. Bojo glanced sideways at the godly face. "Brother Mo, MMH. What is it?" Chin-mo's lips were right beside the youngster's ears, his voice deep and pleasant. "Didn't you say it was sweet just now?" His breath landed on the area above her neck. When it touched her skin, a numbing sensation surged out, causing Bojo to shiver. Chin-mo inched closer, his fingers pressing down on the youngster's restless long legs. He chuckled lightly. "Not bad reaction." Bojo smiled, thinking about how to retaliate. "Brother Mo, most people wouldn't act like this after a confession." "You said it yourself, it's just a normal person." Chin-mo's eyes darkened when he saw the faint smile on the youngster's face. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a group of people eavesdropping outside, he would have torn her clothes apart. Once the thought came, it was hard to suppress it, especially for a man. In such matters, he was too thin-skinned. His face and neck were flushed, even the back of his ears was a patch of pink. He had no choice but to retaliate. Bojo threw out a lead. "The mastermind behind the Coke incident, Brother Mo, let go of me, I'll tell you. In your eyes, I'm such a useless person that I can't even find out who the mastermind is." Chin-mo inched closer to the youngster's neck, his thin lips landing. The cool touch made Bojo melt instantly. She knew that the Almighty had never been in a relationship. But how exactly did he get his skills? Did he specialize in attacking other people's weaknesses? Don't think about it. Chin-mo watched the youngster's watery eyes, dark and clear. He couldn't help lowering his lids, kissing the corner of her eyes. "You were the one who started the fire, how could you have forgotten, MMH?" Such a kiss was unbearable. It wasn't convenient for Bojo to move around. If she moved, there would be physical contact and her secret would be exposed. "Brother Mo, you know I'm not gay. I'm gay because you're my best friend. And a pet." Chin-mo glanced up, pausing slightly. "It's a pity I don't want to treat you as a good friend, no good friend would do such a thing. As for why you weren't gay before, that's because you hadn't met me. I remember you saying you like handsome men, Joe." With that, he lowered his voice. Chapter 728. Before Bojo could pull herself away, she was pulled into the pleasure. He wasn't even 18 years old. Her body couldn't resist his seduction. She didn't have the ability to resist. Besides, that face reminded her of the first time she had pounced on her pet. Messy black hair and a different pair of eyes. It wasn't a woman. Even a man wouldn't be able to escape. He knew she couldn't resist his seduction, but he still used this trick. Bojo raised her arms, circling Chin-mo's neck. Her lips inched closer, not hesitating at all. Chin-mo lifted his thin lips. The moment he kissed the corner of the youngster's lips, a sharp gust of wind blew. It was a beautiful capture and suppression. Their positions swapped. The youngster's arms were by Chin-mo's side, her gaze lowered. "Brother Mo, you should know that even if I have a reaction, it's just a physical reaction. It doesn't mean anything." With that, Bojo lifted her hands, pulling Chin-mo's white shirt up. She wanted to stand up. Chin-mo held onto her wrist, his black hair falling down. He seemed to be smiling, but there was a hint of coldness in his voice. "Why don't you have such a high resistance towards others?" Bojo was aware of the Almighty's skills. If she were to reject such a Almighty, their relationship would fall to the freezing point. But she had to continue. Her identity as a girl would be exposed. But the Almighty had been trying to turn her gay. Shouldn't you take responsibility for flirting? When Chi Nemo glanced up, he didn't give the person in front of him any chance to regret. He pressed the person's hand onto his burning hot spot. He watched as the youngster's face flushed red and her shoulders trembled. Chi Nemo smiled again, looking as dangerous as a devil. His teeth were white and elegant. Didn't you say it was easy to touch, MMH? In the entire world, the Almighty was probably the only one who could behave like this. Even though he said it. His hands were doing that kind of movement. Bojo couldn't control the rising temperature on her face. Chi Nemo arched a brow. Why aren't you being straightforward? Joe, men don't really care about this kind of thing. What do you think, especially good friends? Even good friends don't do such things. Bojo bit down on her lips, her ears turning red. She wanted to pull her hand away. However, Chi Nemo wasn't willing. Even the heat of his breath was a little scorching. There was only the reflection of the youngster in his deep eyes. Is that so? It was a word that was not in his consciousness at all. But it made this man even more irresistible. It was a very strange feeling. Bojo had never experienced it before. He could control a person's breathing and even the look in their eyes. She could clearly see her own shadow swaying in that person's pupils. She could also see Chi Nemo that no one else had ever seen before. That handsome face that could move one's heart was dyed with asterisk 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 at this moment, and when his black bangs hung down, it was even more sexy that it was difficult to pull away. Apart from the sounds that made people blush, there was also this person's aura and that scorching sensation. Bojo felt her palms burning hot. When he came back to his senses, he saw a pair of extremely black eyes. Your skills aren't that good. Chi Nemo lifted the corner of his lips. You don't look like the legendary little prince of the nightclub. The only person who could dig up her dark history at this moment was the Almighty. Bojo wanted to avoid that person's aura. But she realized that the sandalwood scent could spread. She glanced over. You're just a nightclub nouveau riche. Chi Nemo paused. He couldn't help but laugh, a certain part of him becoming more energetic. Do your job properly. Brother Emo, do you confess like this to everyone you meet? Bojo was a lady after all. She couldn't handle it, her face turning redder. Chi Nemo leaned towards the youngster's ear, his gaze as dark as the night. He said something that didn't seem like something he would say. Only you. Because I want you too much, I want to lock you up and do whatever I want to you. I want to hear your hoarse voice begging for mercy, or perhaps, like now. Bojo trembled when she felt the boiling heat. Her thin lips were kissed. Her breath seemed to have been snatched away. Her mind was blank. Her heartbeat was so loud it made her tremble. Bojo could feel the numbness rising from her tailbone. She felt like she had lost all her strength. It seems like you don't dislike me. That magnetic smile, accompanied by the kiss, brushed past her ear. There was also the lingering scent of musk and the steaming breath. Even the hand that was pressing down on her wrist began to move downwards. It brushed past her waist, followed by her abdomen, kissing through the uniform. Just as it was about to move to between her legs, Bojo widened her eyes in shock. A crisp slap. The dissonant sound rang out at this moment. It was extremely piercing. Chi Nemo didn't look at the back of his hand that was red from the slap. Instead, he lowered his lids, looking at the youngster who was still flushed. Bojo replied, Sorry, I don't need it. She stood up immediately. This time, besides her speed, Chi Nemo paused when he heard the two words. This was the response he didn't want to hear the most. As a criminal psychologist, he knew when a man was the easiest to be flirted with. That was why he used such a method to turn a person gay. Chi Nemo turned sideways and looked at the closed bathroom door. It was like a chasm that couldn't be crossed. The clear sound of water flowing could be heard. Bojio watched as the thing in her palms was washed away. She glanced up at herself in the mirror. After washing her hands with the hand sanitizer, she washed her face. Just a little more. Just a little more. The Almighty. Bojio pressed her head against the mirror, catching him off guard. If she had gone any further, her secret would have been exposed. Her thoughts were in a mess. Bojio knew very well that no one could make her do this. It was really messed up. But the Almighty thought she was a blue child. He even took the initiative to flirt with her. Bojio narrowed her eyes. This couldn't go on. She had to think of a way to turn him back. She had to turn him back. Bojio rubbed her brows, glancing at the cigarette and fire that the Almighty had placed in the bathroom. She pulled it out and lit one for herself. It was a handsome pose, the silver strands of hair falling down, contrasting with the smoke. Chi Nemo thought the youngster wouldn't be able to accept what had just happened and would hide in the bathroom. When he pushed the door open, he realized he was wrong. From his face, he didn't seem to be bothered by what had just happened. This was something Chi Nemo had been interested in previously. But now, his heart seemed to be pierced by something. The media that said he was cold-blooded should take a look at him. He was good to you, but he wasn't affected by you. Chi Nemo didn't walk over. How long do you intend to stay here? Bojio averted her gaze, muttering, "You have to give me some time to smoke after the deed." Chi Nemo's chest was starting to hurt. When he heard those 3 words, it was really. He glanced at the youngster who didn't play by the rules. "I'm the one who should smoke after the deed, not you." Bojio didn't reply, thinking that she would get back at him sooner or later, if she had the time. Chi Nemo pulled her out. "Explain to me, you're just a high school student, how did you know about the word, after the deed? Aren't I a little nouveau riche from the nightclub?" Bojio didn't like to smoke, but she did have one thing in mind. "Brother Mo, don't do something like this again." Chi Mo's fingers paused, the light in his eyes dimming. Then, he tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His actions were completely different from hers. It was just that there was not the slightest bit of smoke or fire aura around him. He was very cold. He wasn't talking. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. It was Lin Chintao's voice. "Hey, is Little Spade asleep? Do you want to have another round?" Bojio was glad that someone had come to break the ice. But she didn't want anyone to see the Almighty like this. She opened the door and was about to agree, but when she turned around, her gaze fell on that red streak. She turned around to ask Lin Chintao about other matters. Lin Chintao asked, "What do you want this for?" "I was selling coconuts at noon. My knee is injured. I need to apply some." Lin Chintao shook his head. Soft skin and tender flesh. In reality, ever since Bojio had left, Chi Mo's mood had changed. The air in the room seemed to have been sucked out. Chi Nemo reached out and buttoned his shirt back, one button at a time. But the longer he did, the colder his gaze became. It was so heavy that he looked as though he had been abandoned. What a ridiculous description. No one would have thought that Almighty Qin, who was adored by millions of fans, would be abandoned and rejected by someone. When he raised his head, there was no trace of emotion on his face. But the back of his hand was burning. He glanced over, realizing it was red. But the feeling didn't matter to Qin Imo. Because of the youngster's words. "Brother Imo, don't do what you did today again." Qin Imo knew that the fact that she could say such words so calmly meant that she really didn't like him. Perhaps, she was against it. Qin Mo's fingers tightened. His black hair fluttered in the wind, making it hard to see his expression. The night sky outside the hotel was dark. It was so dark that no one knew what was happening. Vaguely, she could hear a very pleasant bass voice. Chapter 729. Wait a minute. He seemed to have sensed the commotion nearby. He turned and hid in the corridor, his back pressed against the wall as he watched the two of them with his dark eyes. It doesn't seem convenient for you to speak there. It's really inconvenient. There are cameras everywhere in this show. The man chuckled and wanted to say something. However, for some reason, the young man who was walking away suddenly stopped and lifted his eyes to look in his direction. What is it? Lin Chintao arched a brow. Bo Jiu took a step back. Hey, little spade, I'm talking to you, what is it? Lin Chintao asked. Bo Jiu's gaze deepened as she lifted her thin lips. Nothing, my eyes were blurry just now. Tell me, did your eyes get myopic from all the gaming? You're so paranoid, Lin Chintao said before he could finish his sentence. Bo Jiu stuffed a hand into her pocket, a light smile on her lips. Just treat it as me being paranoid, there seems to be someone. She hadn't seen wrongly the figure that had flashed by. But it was strange. Why had he avoided them? Then he paced over there. It was empty. Lin Chintao patted her shoulders. What do you mean, you must have seen wrongly? Bo Jiu ran her fingers over the wall, her gaze deepening because of the yellow sand. Besides, there were footprints on the floor. Even though it was faint, no one had said such a thing. She wouldn't believe it. Besides, he was wearing the team uniform. Clearly, everyone here and everyone's uniform was different. For instance, she and the Almighty were both from Supreme Alliance. The other two were the same. What exactly was his secret? Why was he avoiding them? Bo Jiu glanced up, glancing at the naive Lin Chintao. Let's go get the Yunnan spray. Let's go, let's go. I thought something was wrong with your reaction. Let me tell you, we were playing the escape room earlier. In order to protect you, I've been enduring the terrifying visual impact. Now, my mind is especially sensitive. You really can't provoke me anymore. Be careful that I don't faint in front of you, Lin Chintao said shamelessly. Bo Jiu arched a brow. Then I have to thank you for your protection. Sure, sure. The noisy voices became softer and softer as the two of them left. What's wrong? The ringing on the phone pulled the man's attention back. After the youngster was far away, the man walked out of the darkness with his phone in hand. His eyes were dark. Nothing, I was almost discovered. Discovered? The person on the other end of the phone stopped typing. It's just a misunderstanding. The man looked up, and all the light shone on his face. The gentle outline of his chiseled facial features, every smile carrying a sense of leisure. Who else could it be other than the recently returned Rao Rong? Be careful, especially when facing Qin Mo. Don't be careless. Rao Rong lifted the corners of his lips. I'm no longer who I used to be, of course I know how to deal with it. That's good. You can go now. It's time for us to make a comeback. He pressed the spacebar. A faint Z shape appeared in the man's eyes. Rao Rong lowered his lids. It seems like you have thought of a way to deal with Qin Mo. But who exactly spoiled our plans during the maiden sacrifice? She actually didn't take action just because of your hypnosis and incitement online. I'm still investigating. His fingers paused. Rao Rong arched a brow. Honestly, I thought you were the one who started the live stream to let everyone see how much the world needs to be destroyed. I never expected it to be you. Regardless of who it was, the person who spoiled our maiden sacrifice won't be able to escape. Do you think I won't be able to find that person with my abilities? Rao Rong chuckled lightly. I didn't mean it that way, I still believe in your hacking skills. Alright, the banquet is about to start. It's time for the person at the top of the pyramid to have a taste of being stepped on. Besides, there's something we can use against Qin Mo, what is it? Rao Rong leaned against the wall, his lips still curved. From afar, he looked harmless and handsome. The new MVP, the vice captain of Supreme Alliance. Qin Mo cares about him. The other party listened to the information while searching for the youngster's information. With a laugh, he said, Fu Zhou, an eldest son chased out by his family, a useless person who doesn't know anything other than gaming. Why do you think Qin Mo cares about such a person? You will have to ask Qin Mo about that. Rao Rong's gaze was as dark as the night. I'm just telling you that this person holds a special place in Qin Mo's heart. Perhaps it's because of his gaming skills. The voice on the other end turned cold. If that's the case, it seems like we really have to meet him. Let's see what's so worthy of Qin Mo's efforts. There's a camera in front, I'm hanging up. Rao Rong watched as the person ran towards him, keeping his phone calmly, stuffing a hand into his pocket. The storyboard director finally slowed down when she saw him, heaving a sigh of relief. Almighty Rao, I finally found you. I thought I lost you, where exactly did you go? I've been searching the entire floor. I was hungry, so I came out to find something to eat. I never expected the hotel to be so huge, you should know I have a poor sense of direction. Rao Rong chuckled lightly. Where's Lin Chintao? Didn't you say you were going to form a team? The storyboard director's attention was instantly diverted. That's right, where's Almighty Lin? Where did he run off to? Rao Rong didn't tell her where they had disappeared to. In fact, there were times when he didn't want to face a certain someone. Especially after his return. The hotel hadn't provided any medication. But there were fans outside. He needed someone to divert their attention. Almighty Lin, do you want to prove how handsome you are? Bojo asked with a smile as she watched the scene outside. Lin Chintao was smart. I said, don't even think about throwing me out, I'm afraid the fans will faint from happiness. I'm not going out, do you see that floor-to-ceiling window? Sit there and play a game, I'll help you count the number of people who took your photo and make a record. How's that? When Bojo wanted to convince someone, she had to cater to their interests. Lin Chintao wavered. Bojo continued, the main point is to tell Almighty Fatty that he isn't the most handsome person in the esports industry, you are. Do you really think so? Lin Chintao's eyes lit up. It seems like I'm really more handsome than Qin Mo, Bojo smiled faintly. Of course. Of course he couldn't be compared to the Almighty. Little Spade, you have such good taste, it's worth it to teach your brother. Lin Chintao walked towards the window. Where should I sit? I have to let them take a photo of my side profile, it's the most handsome and deep, that's how I became the coldest assassin. Bojo scanned her surroundings casually, multitasking. Over there, move slightly to the left. That's right, sit down and don't move for a minute. They are already raising their phones to take a photo of you, pay attention to your expression. Lin Chintao was indeed stylish, his fair skin, single eyelids and high nose bridge as he stood sideways. The fans outside the hotel immediately crowded over when they saw him. The youngster made use of this opening to take a step back, removing the receptionist's cap and placing it on his head. Bojo's movements were swift. But it wasn't just fast, more importantly, every move she made was when the attention of others was elsewhere. His movements were as smooth as flowing water, extremely handsome. When she walked out of the hotel, she seemed to have transformed into a completely different person. Just like a magician, she walked towards the east. Lin Chintao was still nagging. Little spade, say something, how's my pose? Would it be more handsome if I lowered my head or? F*ck, where is he? Lin Chintao glanced left and right, but there wasn't any trace of the youngster. In reality, Bojio hadn't gone anywhere. She had hailed a cab to buy some pepper spray from the pharmacy before rushing back. She made good use of her time. On the other hand, Lin Chintao's hair stood on end as though someone had stepped on his tail. It didn't take more than 10 minutes. With the help of Lin Chintao, the Almighty, she had diverted his attention. Bojio didn't have to be deliberate when she returned. Wearing a receptionist's hat, she walked past the door and even helped someone park a car. None of the fans recognized the person in front of them as Spade Z. After entering the hotel lobby, with a flip of her hand, she returned the cap to the receptionist who had lowered his head and walked towards Lin Chintao. Na Si was still sending messages in the group chat. Guess what little Spade did? Beat you. Good job. This was the reply of the most handsome on earth, fatty. Lin Chintao said, shut up, he left me alone to face a group of fans. I'm worried that they will rush into the hotel and pounce on me. Since it's so difficult to stay here, you can leave. Lin Chintao replied, no, I want to enjoy the feeling of being the center of attention for a while longer. The most handsome fatty in the world, shameless. If you are so capable, tell me your coordinates. I will experience it with you. He's downstairs. Hurry up and come down. Lin Chintao raised his head and saw the young man smiling at him. The fans outside the floor-to-ceiling windows shrieked when they saw Bojio. Lin Chintao was about to retort when he noticed the Yunnan Baiyao spray in the youngster's hands. Where did you get this? Of course it's for sale. In order not to let the Almighty know she had been out, Bojio tidied her clothes. Lin Chintao pointed at the fans outside before pointing at the youngster's face, his mouth agape. You can go out like this. You don't understand the skills of a bookworm. Bojio confirmed her appearance before arching a brow. Back to the room. Lin Chintao lowered his head. I have an appointment with Sanpang, I can't miss it. He wasn't going to admit that he was reluctant to part with the current situation. Bojio glanced out the window before breaking into a smile. I'll head up myself, have fun. Don't go, my captain might be coming down in a while. Let's play together and familiarize ourselves with each other's moves. You haven't played against him before, do you remember the previous match? Lin Chintao was clearly different from his usual self. You were injured that day, but little Spade, if Captain was around, we would have won even if you weren't injured. The outcome would always be the same. Bojio paused, her voice calm. You seem to have forgotten that our captain wasn't around that match. Lin Chintao fell silent, his mouth agape and dumbfounded. Bojio glanced at him. How much do you know about your captain? In the entire esports world, who doesn't know that my captain loves me the most? Bojio didn't have to listen to the rest of the sentence since it wasn't going to be useful information. Just as she was about to leave, she heard his cool voice. I've been waiting for him to come back and now, he's finally here. Bojio glanced back, into the pair of bright eyes. Little Spade, I'll show you my true ability in the National League. Bojio chuckled. I'll be waiting. F*ck, I'll be the one waiting. Don't forget, Supreme Alliance still has to revive. Bojio heard the commotion behind her, waving her hands with her back facing him. With his tall and slender figure, even Lin Chintao felt that it wasn't without reason that so many people liked him. This was an era where looks were important. That's right. But there were doubts. Bojio wasn't prepared to say it out loud. There were two types of people she didn't want to interact with. One was the Almighty, who was filled with righteousness and wouldn't be affected by evil. Even if there was a black fog around him, it wouldn't touch him. The other type was Lin Chintao. Even his eyes were burning with hot blood. Just like the members of Supreme Alliance. That was how they should be. Shining in the esports arena. Even if one day, their age and skills couldn't keep up and they became one of the masses. There were also people who couldn't help but recall their youth that had been burned by fire the moment they saw them. Bo Jiao glanced down at the spray in her hands. After the National League. Once it was over, she would give the Almighty an answer. Because she hadn't had such a past, she wanted to have it. Even though she knew deep down that she didn't deserve such innocence after falling into darkness, she still couldn't control herself. She still remembered when she was young. She hugged her favorite little keyboard. Watching her mother's grave. The pastor singing. Everything seemed to be very peaceful. Her father's expression when he lowered his lids. Once a person loses someone important to them, they will become very unhappy. Joe, when you grow up, you must find someone who is very important to you. Do you understand? She lifted her head, confused. But didn't Dad say that as a qualified hacker, I can't tell anyone about my identity? Does Mom know about Dad's identity? What do you think? We're all adults like this. When they encountered a question that was hard to answer, they would ask a rhetorical question. She shook her head. Someone who really cares about you, even if she knows something about you, she will pretend not to know. There are too many hackers in this world. They only operate on the internet. In real life, they might be a bank clerk, a teacher, or even a teenager. You should know that you are the youngest among all the hackers. Daddy said that I'm too handsome, there's nothing I can do. Ha 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 ha, that's right. You're too handsome. You should still remember the hacker's rules. I've memorized them all. The first one. I won't steal anyone's assets on the internet. Whoever you want to deal with, just say it. The last one. Hackers don't just attack users. Instead, they study vulnerabilities through attacks, thereby greatly increasing the security of the system. Looks like our little nine's memory is indeed not bad. Dad, don't you think we should add one more? Oh. Add what? A hacker who is not handsome is not a good hacker. For the Bo family, we can add that. Dad, are we really leaving? I can't bear to. Can't bear to part with your little friend. He's my pet, can't I bring him along? I have the money to support him. He has the money too. Alright, can I write him a letter before I leave? He might not be able to understand your handwriting, it's too ugly. I'll draw a picture. We have always had Lin Shi in our hearts. That's called telepathy. You really should learn Chinese. Do you remember what I told you? You aren't just the heir of the Bo family, all hackers have to abide by the rules. If anyone doesn't follow the rules, you will be the one to clean them up. If anyone tries to harm a hacker, you have to stand up immediately. Joe, you can have important people but not friends. You have to remember, you are the young master of the hacker world. Bo Jiao retracted her memory. She was already in front of the door. The storyboard director was standing outside. Big Spade, you're finally back. Even though she was standing in the corridor, she could feel the cold air in the room. It wasn't a good feeling. It's getting late, go back to sleep. Bo Jiao laughed lightly. Don't worry, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll expose one of the cameras for you to capture the Almighty's beauty. The storyboard director replied immediately, it's for the two of you. No problem. Bo Jiao pushed the door open and entered. She wondered how many cigarettes he had smoked. But there was a hint of indifference in his handsome face. His posture could be taken out without any fear. She recalled the way the Almighty had seduced her. That should have been the first time he had lowered himself. She knew very well that after being rejected like that, no one would be in a good mood. Qin Mo glanced up, reaching out to extinguish the cigarette. I thought you weren't coming back. You left so quickly. Other than being unable to accept it, you must have felt disgusted, right? No. Bo Jiu was quick to deny this point. She felt that it wasn't right. The Almighty wouldn't believe her. After all, her reaction had been too huge. She used the Yunnan Baiyao as evidence. I bought this for Brother Mo, Qin Mo stilled. He had thought of many ways to reply, but this was the only one he hadn't thought of. Bo Jiu didn't waste any time, grabbing his wrist and lowering her head to spray the redness on the back of his hand. Honestly, her actions weren't gentle at all. She was reminded of how gentle the Almighty had been when he had helped her blow dry her eyes and apply lipstick. As expected, her pet was still better at such things. Her actions were gentler. She had already finished spraying. Bo Jiu seemed to recall something, leaning over suavely to blow on the back of his hand. Really? There wasn't a single bit of order. She didn't even know how to take care of others. Qin Mo watched the youngster's actions, feeling a sense of familiarity. It seemed like a long time ago, when he had been, because of this thought, a great pain attacked his brain, and even his temples hurt unbearably. That pain. Qin Mo pressed down on his head. Bo Jiu wasn't sure what had gone wrong. She had never seen Qin Mo in this state before. His usually pale lips were frighteningly pale, much less his actions. Brother Mo. Bo Jiu panicked. Chapter 730. Bo Jiu glanced up at the Almighty's expression. Besides his handsome face, there didn't seem to be any negative emotions. Did that mean he had forgiven her? Bo Jiu moved the ice away, lowering her head to spray the Yunnan Baiyao spray onto the back of his hand. She looked so serious that those who didn't know would think she was in the middle of a major operation. Qin Mo smiled, his chin dangling close to the youngster's head. He lowered his lids, his pale lips touching the furry vortex. That image. Whether it was the posture or the feeling, it was very beautiful. If it wasn't for the fact that the internal camera was covered, the chief director would have lost his cool when he saw this scene from the front of the camera. It was a pity that not all scenes of true love would appear on the show. Because there were always people from the production team around, the time when every team really went to sleep was not very early. At 1 a.m., all the lights in the room were switched off. It wasn't possible for Bo Jiu to be unprepared for sleeping in the same room as the Almighty. Hence, she had a light sleep, only falling asleep at around 3 a.m. The next time she woke up, she was jolted awake by the light. She didn't know when she had gotten so close to the Almighty. A corner of the camera was exposed, facing her and the Almighty's faces. Bo Jiu rubbed her eyes. Without a second thought, she covered the camera, leaned back, and continued to sleep. The production crew. Didn't they agree to expose a camera for them to capture the Almighty's beauty? That's good enough. The storyboard director consoled her colleague. Cut that scene and put it into the main film. It will definitely make the handsome fans bleed. The little assistant coughed. That little bit of broth isn't going to be enough. What else can we do? The storyboard director reminded them. Have you forgotten about the guest guessing and the secret room challenge? Be careful that Almighty Qin and Big Spade don't expose the suspense in front of the entire nation. With that, the production crew thought about the day's events, leaving silently. Should we call them later? They have to wake up at 6 a.m. to continue filming. I heard that Almighty Qin doesn't like to be disturbed. Who told you that? Big Uncle is at the Qin group. I just told him that Almighty Qin is coming to our show. He's such a reliable person that he almost jumped up. He even specifically told me that Almighty Qin doesn't like to chat and doesn't like to have other people around during breaks. He told me to take it easy even if I'm doing a show. Don't worry, Big Spade is here. Wake him up and get him to call Almighty Chin. It feels like Big Spade saved the entire crew. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. 6 in the morning. The sun had not fully shone in yet. Because of the phone's vibration, the youngster stretched out her fair arm. Her eyes were still closed, and her voice was lazy and nasally. Who is it? One word. The little assistant's heart skipped a beat. It's the production crew, it's time for the mission, it's time to wake up. Also, I'll leave the responsibility of waking the Almighty up to you, Big Spade, please, please. The voice on the other end of the phone caused Bojo to open her eyes. She glanced sideways at the person on her right. The thin rays of sunlight shone in, shining on the handsome and elegant face. His mixed blood features were clearly visible. His collarbone and arms were exposed outside the pure white blanket, even his shoulders were perfect. This was the appearance of a puppy. It was better not to let anyone see it. Bojo lifted the blanket, her fair feet stepping onto the wooden floor. She was still holding the phone in her hand. Okay. Then she placed the phone in her pocket. It wasn't safe to take a shower at this time. She still had to change her clothes. She quickly changed in the bathroom. Bojo glanced at Chin Mo on the bed. In the end, she still found him too handsome. Just as she was about to go closer, she heard his low and deep voice. It had the magnetism of a person who had just woken up. Why are you so close to me? Bojo paused. Why did he wake up at this time? Even if she wanted to do something naughty, she couldn't. Chin Mo watched the youngster's slightly depressed face. He lifted the blanket and stood up. He was wearing black trousers and a pair of straight legs. His upper body wasn't wearing any clothes. The oppressive aura was stronger than usual. Bojo took a step back. Chin Mo didn't say anything, but his next action confused her. He pulled her into the bathroom. Then the Almighty released her hand and unzipped his zipper. Bojo's eyes widened. Brother Mo, what are you doing? Didn't you see it? You're going easy on me. Chin Mo didn't stop. He looked so handsome. He looked handsome just by going easy on her. Only the Almighty could do that. But why was he going easy on her in front of her? Bojo narrowed her eyes. On the other side, Chin Mo arched a brow and said nonchalantly, Why? Didn't you say that good friends would go easy on each other the first time we met? Bojo laughed. Brother Mo, you have a good memory. I'm better than the wall-climbing student. Chin Mo pulled his zipper up, looking handsome. He glanced over, his voice calm. It's your turn. Any other girl would have blushed at the Almighty's actions. I can't pee, I came to the toilet just now. Chin Mo glanced at the youngster, brushing past her, his voice slow. Don't worry, I won't touch you before you get used to it. Get used to it? Bojo wondered how she could get used to it. Chin Mo seemed to have read her mind. I'll bring you along when I pee so you can watch a few more times. That way, your hands won't tremble the next time. Bojo, when it came to such matters, Bojo wouldn't be able to take advantage of him. Besides, the Almighty had always been a man of his word. Perhaps, he would bring her along every time he went to the toilet. Once again, Bojo felt that the variety show was a huge trap Foamy had dug for her. Compared to the other two teams, Bojo and Chin Mo were much more efficient. In the other room, Rao Rong watched the youngster lying on the bed, hugging a pillow. He suppressed his patience, lowering his voice. Lin Chentao, wake up. That guy acted as if he hadn't heard anything and turned over to continue sleeping. Who was the one who jumped up and down last night and said to wake him up early the next day? In the end, he had already woken up half an hour ago. He woke this guy up again. Rao Rong chuckled. The temperature was a little cold. He took a bottle of mineral water and poured it towards the man's face, unafraid of the cameras. Lin Chintao was startled by the cold and cursed out loud. When he realized who was standing in front of him, he wiped away the water on his face and smiled, revealing his white teeth. Captain is really back. I wasn't dreaming. If I'm still here after sleeping for a day, then it must be real. After listening to that guy's unconscious words, Rao Rong's expression froze. But soon, he turned his back and didn't let the camera capture his face again. Did this guy really want him to come back? Rao Rong glanced sideways, glancing at the guy who was still hugging the pillow and mumbling to himself. His gaze deepened. When the three teams gathered together, Xiao Sanpang was still swaying back and forth. The crew knew it was too early to start the mission. But they had no choice as they were worried that more fans would appear and affect the filming. Hence, the earlier they started filming, the better. Fortunately, the duration of the show was almost up and the mission was full of explosive news. They just had to head to the last location and the episode would come to a perfect end. It's 8:10 now, we will reach our destination in an hour. Everyone, take a break. At this time, the filming was targeted. After all, they had just woken up, so everyone's enthusiasm for filming was not very high. Ever since they had boarded the car, Bojiu hadn't opened her eyes. Qin Mo sat beside the youngster. Both of them were competing in terms of sleeping skills. In the end, in the image of the camera, the two of them were leaning against each other. Their hair was of different colors, but they were equally handsome. Of course, the youngster's head was slightly lowered. But that didn't affect the storyboard director's excitement. Along the way, almost all the guests had fallen asleep. Weibo was the first to wake up. In other words, ever since they posted the news yesterday, the commotion on Weibo had not subsided. A lot of people went to the production team's official Weibo to leave a message, wanting to see the photos and whether they could sell them to him. Due to the huge popularity, coupled with the fact that there were a lot of illegitimate fans following him everywhere, the production team decided to make a last-minute decision. They told some fans through their official Weibo that the final filming location would be at Linqing University. They told them to be careful and not to act blindly. This way, at the very least, the information would be transparent, and no one would use this point to lie about revealing someone's whereabouts. After seeing the news sent by the program team, the fans really exploded on the spot. Lin City's fans, in particular, were extremely excited. Everything he did before had nothing to do with esports. That mission, on the other hand, could not be separated from esports. Because the mission location was an internet cafe near the university town. He wanted them to walk around the internet cafe and see how many people would understand what esports was like. When it was nearing afternoon, the filming was finally completed. The area outside was filled with fans. After watching Bojiu and the others leave, the storyboard director laughed, turning towards the cameraman at the side. Wait and see, after the broadcast, they will all be extremely popular, especially Spade Z, as though to verify their reaction when they first saw Spade Z, the youngsters' fans were increasing at a visible speed. Even the station had sent an urgent notice, asking them to complete the post-production overnight and broadcast it a week in advance. Those who knew how to advertise knew what it meant to warm up. But this time, there wasn't a need to warm up at all. There were explosions everywhere. In fact, even the storyboard director hadn't expected the video to be so interesting after it was completed. From the youngsters' diss of the production team to meeting up with the Almighty and a series of subsequent actions. The passers-by started to turn into fans. Even those who didn't understand esports started to ask who the silver-haired hunk in the program was. Spade Z's fans continued to increase. Even though it wasn't as many as Chin Mo's, it was slowly becoming the most popular. When the program was nearing its end, it left people yearning for more. Especially when the youngster had just woken up and rubbed his eyes, not forgetting to cover the camera. It was so adorable. Of course, that wasn't the main point. The main point was that the youngster had slept beside Almighty Chin. Countless fans took screenshots of that scene and used it as the background. It was so sweet. Especially when they were sleeping, the youngster's head was leaning against the Almighty's shoulder. Both of them had their eyes closed, their lashes long and handsome. A fan commented, "They are the best brothers in Supreme Alliance. When one of them isn't around, the other will definitely shoulder everything for him. Their faith is stronger than their relationship." He has an indifferent personality and became an almighty at such a young age. Yet, he is able to entrust his back to him. Even when they sleep together, they seem like two well-matched princes. That is Mojo. She read the comment. Countless people left comments and reposted it. The relationship between princes is the most enviable. My almighty slept with my second almighty, what should I do? Alright, he's so handsome, I can only give him my blessings. I hope they will never change and will always be together. After this program, the CP fans were even more enthusiastic about searching for the pink photos of Almighty Chin and the youngster. The more they searched, the more they felt that even their gaze was full of gay love. Will I tell you that when I saw Almighty Chin suddenly lowering his head to complete the task with Big Spade through a piece of paper, I blushed. My mom was right next to me and asked me what was wrong. How should I tell her that the two people I like the most are finally together and they are kissing each other so openly? I can't stop thinking about it. Let me be excited for a while. That scene caused a wave of excitement. The fans were also mischievous. I just want to ask Almighty Chin if he dares to kiss Big Spade without a piece of paper and directly kiss him. Like the program crew, the perfect CP Almighty assists. Based on my understanding of Almighty Chin, no one can force him to do something he doesn't want to do. Could it be that he doesn't resist being close to Big Spade from the bottom of his heart? Not only does he not resist, he is also declaring his sovereignty the whole time. Am I the only one who feels this way? I think the same as the one above. Also, did you see my Big Spade? He is so obedient in front of Almighty Chin. Also, how is this child so strong? He pushed a whole cart of coconuts by himself while the Almighty walked beside him leisurely. Big Spade even looked happy and didn't feel like he was at a disadvantage. What a dumb son of a landlord. The main thing is that when Big Spade woke up, he looked at the Almighty and then at the camera. At the end, he raised his hand. That expression of not knowing where he was so handsome and cute. He is even cuter when he is obediently beside Almighty Chin, like a little loyal dog. The more heated the discussion online, the darker Wu Zhen's eyes became in front of the computer. The more she watched, the more resentment she felt. Until she saw the kissing scene at the end. Wu Zhen raised her hand and with a forceful swing, the mouse and keyboard fell to the ground. Why? Why was she in such a miserable state now? That youngster could participate in the variety show with Brother Mo. Now, not only was she banished from the crime squad forever, she couldn't even see old Masterin anymore. The Wu family had a lot of money and could let her do many things. She could even go overseas to develop her career. But Wu Zhen had never thought of letting this matter go. No matter how far she went, she had to maintain her outward appearance. This had always been her creed. She took a deep breath and stood up as well. She called for the servants to come up and tidy up. Miss, someone wants to see you. The Wu family's butler was much calmer than the servants. Even though there were so many broken things on the ground, he didn't have much of an expression. Wu Zhen glanced at him. I won't be seeing anyone for a while. Everything was gone, she couldn't accept it at all. The person said she came from the Fu Corporation and wants to talk to you about Fu Jiu alone. She believes that you will be very interested. Wu Zhen's eyes lit up when she heard that. Let her in. Yes, Mississippi. Less than 3 minutes later. A person appeared in the Wu family's living room. That person seemed to be in a bad mood recently, so she had to pay attention to her appearance. But now, she didn't have the money to pay attention to her appearance. But the marks on her eyebrows were still there. If she wasn't the mistress who interfered with Fu Zhongyi and He Honghua, who else could it be? You are. Wu Zhen hadn't seen her before. In Wu Zhen's heart, even rich people had their own circles. Be it her or Brother Mo. The person in front of them was nothing in their eyes. Su Mei naturally lowered her stance in front of Wu Zhen. Miss Wu, you must have forgotten that we attended an evening party. There were many people in the circle then, so my husband and I could only watch from afar. Fu Zhongyi. Wu Zhen lifted her eyes when she heard the name. Wasn't he the father of that glass man? Su Mei, yes, I know Miss Wu has met with some trouble recently. Because of the same person, I can't enter the company and my son's esports career is ruined because of him. Even if I go to hell, I will drag Fu Jiu down with me. I believe Miss Wu feels the same. Wu Zhen arched a brow. No one in this world has the ability to drag me down to hell. Of course, I'm just making an analogy. Su Mei was indeed someone who had been in the business world for a long time. She was very perceptive when it came to catching someone's attention. But I have a piece of news that I got a private detective to investigate a long time ago. He said that Fu Jiu's birth has a secret that He Honghua has been trying to cover up. As for what the secret is, I will need Miss Wu's help to find out. That's why I'm here today, to see if Miss Wu is interested in helping me deal with that person who should have gone to hell a long time ago. A secret at birth? What kind of secret do you think it is? Wu Zhen was obviously interested in this suggestion. Su Mei didn't give in. I will tell Miss Wu about this when we reach He Honghua's hometown. Don't worry, Miss Wu, I want that person to have a taste of falling into the abyss just like you. This secret is enough to ruin Fu Jiu's reputation. He won't even be able to participate in esports competitions. Okay. Wu Zhen's eyes were full of venom. She had to admit that Su Mei's words struck a chord in her heart. Moreover, she knew very well that the enemy of her enemy could become a partner. People like Su Mei were still too young to use her. Wait until she knew what the secret was. She would kick this middle-aged woman away. Did she really think that she could use the Wu family as she pleased? The sky was changing outside. The only thing that didn't change was the popularity on Weibo. There were less than 2 days left until the revival match. But the fans' minds weren't on this. It was so sweet that they didn't know what to do. That show was too popular. It was the first time that a variety show invited esports players as guests. So the audience wasn't just fans. There was also the Sakura Stream team that had settled down here and was preparing to participate in the National League. These people don't look too bad. Looks are just for show, the competition isn't about that. Is that so? But I remember that you lost to these people on the Japanese server. What? It's them. One of them was short, a baby-faced blonde. The moment he heard this, he immediately went onto the television, his face pressed against the screen. Which one? Which one beat me the last time? The one lying on the sofa was also a handsome man, but he wasn't the same as the one from China. He arched a brow and pointed casually. This one is especially talkative. And that silver-haired handsome youngster, rumor has it that he became the first clear king of a region the moment he started playing. He even beat someone in Tokyo. It wasn't an injustice for you to lose to him. The baby-faced man glanced towards the screen, his finger pointing at Bojo's figure. Him. Aha. The baby-faced man pouted. Just because he's older than me. That was true. The baby-faced man was the youngest member of Sakura's Stream team. He hadn't even graduated from junior high school and had become an official member. His ability wasn't just for show. His weakness was underestimating his opponent. Vice Captain, what do you think of this Spade Z? Mei Nan, who was lying on the sofa, turned around and asked the man who looked like he would never wake up. He was yawning, holding a comic book in his hand as he sat on the wooden floor. His eyes were clear. What? It's useless to ask Vice Captain, when has he ever cared about the other team members? The baby-faced man wanted an answer in his heart, so he jumped over and pointed at the screen. Vice Captain, that one, the silver-haired one, what do you think of him? Hoshino glanced up, looking lazily at the direction he was pointing at. At this moment, the youngster on the screen happened to be in the secret room escape stage. Because of his extremely handsome skills, the scene that caused countless Spade Z fans to scream was reflected in Hoshino's eyes. Chapter 731. When this name rang in their minds, even their breathing became a little stagnant. Crack. The sound of the comic book falling on the floor and Hoshino's reaction stunned the youth. Vice Captain, what's wrong? Hoshino paused for a second, then took off his headphones and looked at the TV screen in front of him. His white shirt and beige sweater gave people a warm feeling. But those who were familiar with him could tell that Hoshino was different from before. Which team is this guy from? Hoshino pointed in a direction, and the young man just smiled, his eyes bright and teeth white. Ah. Him. I think he's from Supreme Alliance, not Xiangnan. In the eyes of the Sakura Stream Squad, the only team that could be called a rival in China was Xiangnan. They didn't even need to use all their strength to deal with Xiangnan, let alone other teams. Hoshino looked down, his hair falling down, the ends sliding over the bridge of his nose. Supreme Alliance, Vice Captain is interested in them. The person lying on the sofa pushed himself up with one hand and jumped down from the sofa. The corner of his mouth was half-curved. Coincidentally, I'm also interested. Who's the one who defeated little cutie? I really want to see it for myself. Oh right, they will be participating in the revival match this time. The youth was stunned. Watanabe, are you crazy? You want to go to the crime scene together? Do you know how many of our fans there will be? We are international, especially with your face that often broadcasts and participates in variety shows. Besides, Vice Captain won't agree to your request, which is obviously because you're bored. Okay. Hoshino looked away from the screen and interrupted the youth. Then he put one hand in his pocket and turned to walk towards the room. This was a way to avoid people seeing his expression. The youth and Watanabe were both shocked, pausing for a moment. Vice Captain, he agreed. The youth couldn't believe it. Watanabe was very happy. Ha ha ha, I can finally go out and play. I heard that the food in China is very delicious. I'm so bored in the apartment that I'm about to grow hair. Quick, go and see if we have any disguise clothes, especially masks, or we will be recognized. The baby-faced youth didn't understand. For some large activities, the vice captain would use the excuse of sleeping to refuse. Why did he agree to watch a small revival match today? Watanabe was smart, flicking his head. Didn't you see, Vice Captain, that's Spade Z's? What? You seem to care a lot. Hoshino was indeed very concerned. That facial features and feeling were obviously Z. But the boy in the video was younger than Z. Or rather, Z when he was young. His hair color was also wrong. Z's hair was darker than everyone else's. Their clothes were also different. The Z he knew. She was used to wearing a hooded black trench coat, so no one could see her face. The youngster on the screen was obviously different. However, there was no mistaking the feeling of him looking at her with his brows raised. Z was good at disguising himself. How to find the real Z? This was the tacit understanding they had developed over the years as partners. He had to see that youth with his own eyes. To confirm something. Why did Z become like this? Chapter 732. The popularity of the show continued. There was a place where the television couldn't be seen. Han Susu was the trigger for the incident with the Han family. But the person who went in was her father. In this circle, this was normal. Han Susu's ability to accept it wasn't good. The Han family was investigated. All their assets were confiscated. How could Han Susu get used to such a life? But some people's brain circuits were different. Since she had no money, she became a waitress. Wasn't it written in novels that a poor girl would always meet her Prince Charming like this? Although some people didn't dare to have anything to do with the Han family, they didn't reject Han Susu out of respect for old madam. But Han Susu really thought that life was like a novel. A waitress didn't know how to respect customers at all. She behaved like the young mistress of the Han family, arrogantly looking at everyone. Of course, she didn't think she was wrong. She felt that this was her pride. When she was in a bad mood, she would tell everyone she met how heartless her grandmother was. She didn't know that the reason she could stand here now was because of old madam. The manager was really helpless against her. It wasn't easy to control her, giving him a huge headache. After all, Han Susu used to be famous. She came here to work so that she could meet those people again and get them to take her away. After all, with her beauty, she rushed upstairs with all her might. The manager stopped her. She felt that she was being reasonable. If you continue like this, leave. This was what the lobby manager could no longer hold back and blurted out. Han Susu's face turned pale. She pinched the edge of her skirt, thinking that she couldn't leave this place. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. It was low and had a unique indifference. All of you, leave. Han Susu turned, her face filled with surprise. Brother Chin. She really didn't expect to see someone she knew again. She wanted to pounce on Chin Mo. Chin Mo stuffed one hand into his trouser pocket and took a step back. His thin lips curved up, but there wasn't a trace of warmth in his eyes. Inciting people to splash coke and taking the lead to question me online. When you did all these things, didn't you think that I would find you? Han Susu froze. I didn't, you do. Chin Mo took a step forward and lowered his voice. Why did you do all these things? Han Susu clenched her fists. That's because he's a disgusting gay. I've spent so much money to support him, but he's still pretending to be aloof. His official fans are the same, paranoid and wary of me. What the hell is this? Big brother Chin, don't be fooled by him. He's by your side not because he wants to be your brother, but because he wants to be with you. If Sister Wu didn't tell me, I would still be in the dark. It's her again. After Chin Mo asked the question he wanted to know, he straightened his body, his voice slow. Chapter 733. Deputy Zhang, who was waiting outside, reached out to open the car door when he saw Chin Mo. The moment his young master alighted, he had asked him about the results of the investigation before rushing over to look for Chin Mo without taking a break. The unknown malevolence was buried in his eyes, his entire aura cold. Send the people back from the Wu family. Chin Mo sat on the sheepskin seat, his handsome face faintly discernible in the darkness. The Wu family was different. Deputy Zhang placed his hands on the steering wheel, glancing back with uncertainty. The Wu family should have restrained themselves. With old master in around, sending the people back seems, send. Without any unnecessary words, his face was as exquisite as porcelain, the contours clear. It was a Qin mo that was rarely seen. Deputy Zhang knew that under normal circumstances, no one would be able to change his young master's decision. Are you still going to keep an eye on Miss Wu? Are you going to tell young master who she interacted with and what she did? Qin mo shut his eyes, crossing his legs. Yes. Deputy Zhang understood that Miss Wu's actions had probably crossed his young master's bottom line. Otherwise, he wouldn't have treated an old friend in such a manner. Just as he was deep in thought, a voice came from the back of the car. Head to the Han family after you're done, give old Madame Han what she needs. Yes, young master. Dealing with Han Susu but not implicating old Madame Han was his young master's principle. Old Madame Han was a person worthy of respect. Those who came from the military knew that. At the same time, Deputy Zhang knew that old Madame Han's greatest need was money. The Han family had failed and their accounts were in a mess. Old Madame Han was such a righteous person, but if her descendants didn't live up to her expectations, she wouldn't be able to enjoy her old age. Deputy Zhang knew that it wasn't a good time to transfer the money. The money that young master withdrew was enough for old Madame Han's living expenses. Hence, he stopped the car and sent them to the residence. The moment they entered, the sound of a teacup shattering could be heard. Han Susu shouted, "In the past, your words carried weight because you wanted us to rely on your connections. Now that the Han family has fallen, don't even think about controlling me. You old hag, you have a dark heart. I'm your biological granddaughter, how could you harm me like this? I don't even have a job now. What's wrong with you going to the Qin family to say a word?" Old Madame Han supported herself with a walking stick, but her old eyes weren't muddled. It was this gaze that made Han Susu feel disgusted. She looked like she was about to hit the old man. Adjutant Zhang twisted her wrist and pushed her away, looking at old Madame Han. Old Madame Han shook her head. "I've let you see a joke. Please don't say that." Chapter 734. Please keep it. Deputy Zhang raised his hand and saluted. When he walked past Han Susu, his gaze was cold. Han Susu was smart. She knew what the envelope was. It had been a while since she had seen such a thick stack of cash. She reached out to snatch it. Old Madame Han looked at her and slammed the wooden stick. "Beast!" Han Susu didn't think she was wrong. She snatched the money and sneered. "Old woman, that's all you can do. You didn't save me previously. Take this money as atonement." Han Susu scolded the old woman. With this money, she could continue to squander. She wouldn't have to return to this empty shell again. The old woman wanted to use money to get her brother out, so she could do it herself. This person wouldn't be able to harm her anymore. She was going to have a feast today. Oh right, she had to buy a dress. It had been a long time since she attended a gathering in the circle. This time, she had to be beautiful. At this moment, Deputy Zhang was sitting in the car. He watched as the figure ran further and further away. He turned and asked Qin Mo, "Young master, do we need to?" "No need." Qin Mo held a pen and wrote a check. His voice was calm. "This is for the old woman. Let her spend it. Once she gets used to it and can't quit, someone will punish her." Deputy Zhang looked at the check. He instantly understood why young master had asked him to write an envelope. In this world, there was a cause and effect for everything. For Han Susu, if she knew her place, she might be able to survive. But if she didn't, she would be a joke in this circle that valued status and background. That person had snatched her only relative's money to do the most vain thing. The price she had to pay was not even her bones. Deputy Zhang felt a chill run down his spine when he thought of this. He asked tentatively, did young master predict this from the beginning? Dealing with people like this was really killing without spilling blood. Qin Mo glanced up at him. I didn't ask her to snatch her grandmother's money. But you expected it. Deputy Zhang looked up. To the young master, it was easy for him to see through a person's mentality. Moreover, it wasn't difficult for him to analyze a person's actions based on their mentality. This was also the reason why the Huaxia organization was afraid of him. It had been a long time since the young master had dealt with someone like this. This made Deputy Zhang think that the young master only knew how to play games apart from business matters. In fact, apart from him, no one knew how powerful the young master was. However, after that incident, he never touched any more cases. No one knew what had caused the young master to lose some of his childhood memories. Perhaps only the young master himself knew the truth behind this. Other than young master, there was also Director Huang, who had been in charge of the case with young master. The boss and madam had asked Director Huang about it. Director Huang only told him to give his young master some time to get over the knot in his heart. Because he didn't know much. Deputy Zhang could still remember the look of the young master at that time. He seemed to be in a state of confusion and didn't seem to have any emotions. It was only after meeting the young master of the Fu family that it regained some of its liveliness. Just as Deputy Zhang was thinking about it, Qin Mo unlocked his phone. The youngster's unique voice entered her ears through WeChat. Brother Mo, I'm at your house now. After sending the message, Bojiu glanced up, smiling at Madame Zhang who had brought the tea over. Thank you, Madame Zhang. Madame Zhang found the girl in front of her rather familiar, but she couldn't recall where she had seen her. The Almighty didn't seem to have any requirements for such things, so she replied lazily, meat, spicy hot pot. After hearing the answer, a voice that seemed to be laughing yet not laughing came over. What else do you eat besides hot pot? Bojiu replied seriously, rice. The next moment, the voice on the other side of the phone laughed. She didn't understand what was so funny about it. Chapter 736. So easy to take care of. Rather than saying it was easy to take care of him, it was more accurate to say that he always ate the same few things: hot pot, meat skewers, rice, instant noodles, and chocolate lollipops. Moreover, every time he ate these things, he would have a blissful expression on his face. Just thinking about it would inexplicably make him feel better. Qin Mo held onto his phone, watching the reflection outside the car window, his gaze gentle. Pass your phone to Madame Zhang. Bojiu, oh. The moment he heard that voice, Qin Mo could imagine the scene of the youngster following his instructions and passing his phone to Madame Zhang. After a short while, the person on the other end of the line changed. Hello, young master. Madame Zhang was puzzled. She didn't believe that girl could contact her young master. Qin Mo said, Madame Zhang, listen to me, stay further away. All right. Madame Zhang was confused. Qin Mo's voice was calm. Let's eat hot pot tonight. Don't cut too much meat. His eyes get allergic easily. Steam a pot of rice. I'll be home in an hour. Let him eat when the rice is ready. Watch him and let him drink more water. Madame Zhang's eyes widened. She had never seen her young master so concerned about anyone before. Bojiu wasn't used to wearing a dress. There weren't any pockets, which meant that there weren't any sweets. Now that she saw Madame Zhang's reaction, she was curious to hear what her puppy had said to Madame Zhang. Why did she look so frightened? All right. Madame Zhang nodded with much difficulty. Qi Nemo held a cigarette between his fingers, a playful smile on his face. Is he standing beside you, trying to eavesdrop? Madame Zhang never knew her young master had such a childish side. Qi Nemo laughed softly. There's a bag of sweets in the drawer in my room, chocolate-flavored. Pass it to him before you cook, yes. After making the call, Nanny Zhang hung up the phone. She looked at her daughter in front of her with an even more unfathomable gaze. The main thing was that young master actually knew how to give a girl candy, and it was specially prepared. This was really strange. Bo Jiu blinked when she saw that gaze. Madame Zhang seemed to be treating her as an unknown. But very quickly, she tossed this matter aside. After Madame Zhang went upstairs and came down, she passed her a bag of lollipops. As long as there was food, it was the most perfect thing in life. Bo Jiu bit the lollipop and opened the magazine in her hands. She was still thinking about using this posture to see if she could straighten him when she met the Almighty. If it really didn't work out, then we'll talk about it again. At this moment, Qin Mo didn't expect the youngster to have such thoughts. Even more so, he did not expect the other party to wear female clothes. Hence, when Qin Mo walked into the Qin family's house and saw the slender figure sitting beside the steaming hot pot, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Madame Zhang was the first to see Qin Mo. She greeted, "Young master." Bo Jiu tilted her body and glanced over, her lips still carrying her unique smile. The corners of her eyes were raised, but the color of her hair had changed. Her long hair was growing without restraint. Her face was still the same, but under the contrast of the black chiffon dress, there was a hint of exquisiteness. Under the light, the tear mole under her brows was alluring, like the illusion of a water demon. Their eyes met. Chapter 737. In the next second. Before Madame Zhang could react, her young master had already grabbed her daughter's wrist, heading towards the second floor. This. Madame Zhang covered her mouth, her expression changing. Bo Jiu arched a brow, but before she could speak, she was pressed against the door. Qin Mo lowered his lids, his gaze inching closer, his breath carrying the slight coldness from outside. He hadn't forgotten. For some reason, he was certain he was gay. His dreams after nightfall were all about the person in front of him. So many times, he had dreamed of tearing her clothes apart, bullying her harshly. Now, this guy doesn't want to live anymore. After his confession, she still had the guts to cross-dress in front of him. Qin Mo tightened his grip. Bo Jiu didn't try to break free, instead, she stared into Qin Mo's eyes, her lips lifting. Brother Mo, looking at me now, don't you think a girl is better? His boiling blood was instantly extinguished after hearing this sentence. Qin Mo watched the person in front of him, his voice cold. Is this the reason for cross-dressing? You want to tell me a girl is better? Bo Jiu was good at reading people's expressions. She knew the Almighty was angry and was thinking about how to express her desire to straighten him out. Qin Mo's gaze turned colder and colder, like the deep sea, without any warmth. Even his nobility couldn't suppress that unique indifference. I like men, and I will only like men forever. Does my liking make you feel so uneasy? So uneasy that you are using cross-dressing to change my mind. It seems like you really can't accept me, but I won't give up on my feelings for you. Keep your thoughts to yourself, don't make me angry. Bo Jiu opened her mouth. Before she could say anything, a familiar coldness came from the side of her lips. It was a cold kiss. It was cold from head to toe. Just like Qin Mo's heart. Bojo had always wanted to straighten him out, but she had forgotten that a person's sexual orientation couldn't be changed. Even if she didn't want the Almighty to be gay. But, she understood now. She didn't want to, but the truth was the truth. In a trance, those thin lips moved to her ears and threatened, "Joe, you don't seem to understand your brother too well. Once I set my eyes on something, I will never let it go." With that, Chinemo retracted his hand and stood there with his back straight. For some reason, his voice was deep and cold. "Change into your clothes before coming down." Bojo stood in the same spot, watching as the figure disappeared by the door. She wondered if she should keep her distance. The Almighty's attitude explained everything. He didn't like her as a girl. Unfortunately, she was a woman herself. That was good too. Bojo glanced up at the night sky. She and the Almighty didn't belong to the same world. Her identity as the young master of the Fu family would last for another month. Before she leaves, she will confess everything. Similarly, he had to forget about his life here. Bojo reached out and wore the black t-shirt. There was a dagger at the side of her waist. She lowered her eyes and laughed. This was the reason why she couldn't be the real Fujo. She was Bojo. The Bojo who was born in darkness and would return to it. She would always have a knife on her body. Just like how she would never give up on being a hacker. Just based on this point alone. She and the Almighty would only be opponents, not friends, and definitely not anything else. Chapter 738. Downstairs, Madame Zhang had wanted to ask her young master who the daughter was. But when she saw Qin Mo's icy expression, she swallowed her question. When she was placing the bowls and chopsticks, then she heard a low voice. "When did he come?" 5. He has been waiting for young master. Madame Zhang studied Qin Mo's expression, unable to understand his thoughts. Only when the silver-haired youngster walked down in a black t-shirt did her eyes widen. Just now, that daughter was young Master Joe. That explained why young master was so concerned about her. If she was young Master Joe, everything made sense. But were all boys like that? Did they like to wear female clothes? Bojo noticed Madame Zhang's expression and smiled at her. Madame Zhang was still digesting the news since the daughter was too pretty and didn't match the handsome youngster. "Let's eat." Qin Mo's voice was faint. Madame Zhang knew that her young master wasn't in a good mood. But she wasn't sure why. This hot pot meal was probably the quietest hot pot meal the two of them had ever had. In the past, their interaction wasn't like this. Especially the youngster, who was a man of few words. He was polite and even waved at Madame Zhang after the meal. "Madame Zhang, I'm going back, thank you for the hot pot." When Madame Zhang came out, she could only see the youngster's smile. Qin Mo gripped the cup tightly, his knuckles turning white. He stood up. "I'll send you. It's still early, it's convenient. I called for a cab online." Bojo opened her hands, showing him the screen. Qin Mo didn't say much. After the youngster left, Madame Zhang realized something wasn't right. Under normal circumstances, her young master would always try his best to get young Master Joe to stay the night. Even if he didn't stay, he would send him home personally. But this time, he just stood outside. After an unknown period of time, the wind seemed to have started to blow. Assistant Zhang hesitated before walking out with his coat. "Young master, let's go back, it's getting late." Qin Mo's fingers twitched. In that moment, he didn't feel cold. It was as though there was a hole in the depths of his heart, allowing the wind to enter. It was empty. He had never thought about what he would do if he couldn't turn him gay. It was a very obvious sense of distance. It emanated from the youth's body. Qin Mo asked himself again. What was so good about this person? If he wanted a good-looking woman, he could find one anywhere. Those who were gentler than this fellow could be found everywhere, young master. Adjutant Zhang said in a low voice. Qin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette, the smoke filling the air. Give the Fu family a call and ask if young Master Jiu reached home safely. Yes. After Deputy Zhang finished speaking, he glanced at his wrist. Young master, the revival match is tomorrow. Your hand is important. Hearing this, Qin Mo took a step forward in the night, allowing the dampness to hit his body and the smoke to surround him. It was Qin Xiaodong who picked up the call. After hanging up, he looked in the direction of the second floor. Yes, my young master has returned. Yes, to be honest, there was clearly something wrong with the young master today. How should he put it? He spoke too little. Even his smile was different from before. As soon as he entered the door, he went straight into his room. Chapter 739. Qin Xiaodong couldn't find an answer. Because he didn't know that sometimes, the revelry of a group of people would show how lonely the person who didn't fit in was. The first stop of the revival match. This day was the last chance for all the Supreme Alliance members. The youngster skateboard, sweeping through the long alley like the wind. Outside the arena, the fans were already looking forward to it. The cheers they could hear weren't any lower than the semi-finals. Because everyone knew that Supreme Alliance was participating in this year's revival match. That wasn't all. What made the fans even more excited was that person's return. Swoosh! The car door was pulled open. The first thing that caught their eyes was the pure black uniform, fluttering in the wind. Many female fans couldn't help covering their mouths. The media had once said that Qin Mo's appearance was no less than an A-list superstar. This time, it was even more so. He stood in front of the car, tall and straight, his side profile handsome. His left hand was wrapped in a white bandage, like 1,000 layers of petals spreading out, cold and indifferent. The two words, Supreme Alliance, floated in the wind like dragons and phoenixes. Some of the teams at the side saw it and realized that it wouldn't be easy for them to win this time. Because Qin Mo was back. Qin Mo's return attracted some teams that didn't need to participate in the revival match. However, they sat in the audience seats, wanting to see how good Qin Mo was. In the resting room, Lin Feng bent over to tie his shoelaces. He raised his arm and naturally placed it on Yunhu's shoulder. Are you worried? Of course not. Yunhu tilted his head, his lips still filled with arrogance. The two of them wore the same uniform and when they stood together, they looked especially compatible. The revival match wasn't just a test of skills, it was also a test of the team members' endurance and stamina. That's right, stamina. A high-intensity consecutive match. 5 matches in a day. Each match would take at least 2 hours. Such intensity was a form of training for the contestants' eyes. Moreover, they had to consider tactics and how to recover their hand speed. Every team had to measure their members' fitness and endurance before arranging the order of appearance. It was different from the other teams that talked about strategy. Qin Mo held a cigarette between his long fingers, looking as handsome as a celebrity. Finish it quickly, don't waste time. Not too much, not too much. Lin Feng arched a brow, turning towards Bo Jiu who was putting on her uniform. Little spade, captain's words mean don't nag, just do it. I also think it's better to win as soon as possible. The young man looked up, his porcelain white canine teeth biting on the zipper. With a tearing sound, he finished putting on the battle uniform, but the smile at the corner of his mouth was still evil. Otherwise, how can we show our standards? Lin Feng snorted. These two people were really of the same path. They were really shameless. He also had to consider the feelings of the other teams. Everyone was still discussing strategies, but these two were actually thinking about how to save time. Take it easy. You might be able to kill quickly, but Sister Yao and Baby Monk won't be able to keep up. Lin Feng opened a bottle of water and shot her a look. Bo Jiu glanced back and smiled. She didn't say much, rolling up the sleeves of her uniform. She bit on her lollipop and stretched her legs casually. Her legs were loose, looking devilish. Chapter 740. Qin Mo's gaze was calm, the voice that came out of his thin lips was graceful but deafening. Let's go. With that, everyone stood up. Everyone stood up. Their postures and appearances were all different, but because they were all wearing the same uniform, they gave off a fiery aura. The lights shone down. The cameras were aimed at one spot. When they walked out, he felt as if something had collapsed at this moment. Even from the camera, it could be seen that the audience's eyes were overflowing with light when they saw these people. Supreme Alliance will definitely win. It was a cry of support that came from the bottom of their hearts. They didn't want them to stop here. They wanted to keep winning. I didn't expect this team to be so famous. In the corner of the audience, there was someone with a half smile. Just a look at his figure was enough to tell that he wasn't bad looking. But he was dressed up tightly. When he spoke, he pressed down on the brim of his cap to avoid the passing fans. On his left was a slender figure. His eyes were like ink as he stared at the silver-haired youngster. His high nose bridge was accentuated by the flashing lights. He didn't speak. However, it could be seen that among the three people who came, he was the most central one. Ayayaya, there are so many people in China. There was a baby-faced youngster with black-rimmed spectacles and a school bag. He pushed his spectacles up and sized them up. We only see such a huge crowd during the National League. There aren't usually so many revival matches. The number of people in different countries is different. Why are you carrying a teddy bear bag? Aren't you childish? Watanabe, who was wearing a cap, reached out and flicked the youngster's back. The baby-faced youngster widened his eyes. What do you know, this is called disguise. The two of them were about to quarrel again. Let's find a place to sit first, the man standing in the middle said calmly with a magnetic voice. Ah. I know. The baby-faced youngster stretched out his hand. Vice Captain, you want to sleep, right? I bought 3 tickets for the quietest seats, it's perfect for watching the competition. If you're bored, you can rest here. What's there to rest for? Look at the beauties around us. Watanabe had always been a playboy. Someone once said that he was only in love with esports. Other than esports, there was nothing else that could keep him going. The three of them sat down. Only Hoshino's gaze was focused on the arena. As for the other two, one was playing with his phone out of boredom, and the other was lowering his hat. In short, no one really cared about this revival match. After all, an international sports team like theirs did indeed have the right to do so. It wasn't arrogance, but it was the most normal behavior. The revival match had officially begun. There was a line of words clearly written on the screen above. 1v1. The members of Supreme Alliance, Qin Mo. Just the appearance of that name. The neon lights converged into one beam. Whispers could be heard from all directions. They were talking about the man who was already sitting in front of the computer. Elegant, abstinent, handsome. However, he was such a person. But it only made his opponent feel a little. An indescribable chill ran down his spine. Was Supreme Alliance here to revive? He was clearly here to get back at them. As soon as it started, Almighty Qin appeared. Chapter 741. Swish. The sound of the game's sound effect sounded. Before the crowd could react, Lin Fan had already left. Qin Mo's slender fingers were already pressing on the keyboard. The computer version of Hero was different from the mobile version. Hand speed was very important. But Qin Mo gave people a feeling that he was not in a hurry. When the audience reacted, they found that he was actually using one hand and the other hand was just a support. This made the opponent angry. He couldn't hold back his temper and directly jumped over from the wilderness, wanting to sneak attack. But at this moment, Qin Mo's operation suddenly changed. However, at this moment, the opponent didn't notice it. Only the audience who could see the full screen knew. Qin Mo was switching pages. He was so fast that before the audience could remember this image, he had already switched to the next one. Just when the audience didn't know what Qin Mo wanted to do, the crisp tapping sound of the keyboard could be heard. No matter how messy the image was, it didn't seem to affect Qin Mo's operation. The mouse moved to the right place, and a fierce kill. At that moment, almost everyone could see that the brilliance on the screen transformed into a long spear. The blade advanced tens of feet with an unstoppable momentum, like a shooting star in the Buddha's light, heading straight for the person who thought he could sneak attack him. The person wanted to dodge, but found it was too late. Because when the long spear was horizontally, it seemed to draw God's domain. His movement became slow, and he turned back, wanting to stab the opponent. Not to mention his hand speed, he couldn't even distinguish the image in front of him. The screen was full of brilliance. KO. The first drop of blood. He was dead. And the person sitting opposite him. His black hair was covered by the headphones, his side profile was handsome, and his facial features were mixed. His operation didn't slow down at all. Not only fast, but also very stable. Less than a second after his death, even the defense tower was attacked by the opponent. The empty arena was silent. No one moved, only their mouths were open. They were even replaying the changes of Qin Mo's fingers when he attacked in their minds, but found it was too fast to form. Commentator. At this moment, Qin Mo spoke. Even the commentator needed his reminder. Cough, Almighty Qin's move. The commentator hadn't finished his words. He was swallowed by a burst of cheers. The audience no longer needed commentary. They just wanted to watch the replay. How could Almighty Qin feel so good when he kills? He even pushed down a tower. He killed his way through. In just a few minutes, the competition would be over. In fact, it didn't take much. Bojo supported her chin lazily. Her long and narrow eyes lifted when she saw Qin Mo's operation. Her smile was captured by the cameras and the crowd screamed again. The Chinese fans are so passionate. I'm so envious. The baby-faced man looked at this scene and his tone was filled with yearning. Hoshino's eyes were fixed on the screen in the middle of the screen. The youth's face flashed by, and that expression that he was most familiar with. Other than Z, he couldn't find another person like him. However, what kind of disguise could make someone look several years younger? Supreme Alliance's captain is not bad. Watanabe's attitude was a little sloppy before, but now that he looked at the slow-motion screen, his eyes narrowed. Not bad. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.